You are very welcome to a new part of the Ready4Raiding strategy guide. In the next few minutes, we will explain a few abilities. To make it easier, we are showing them with an identification tag with 3 different symbols which might be crossed out, which are supposed to show you if these are suitable for your player type or not. Now to the actual boss. This is the Staggy. He is a Ragnar's nuclear physicist. Together with a few goblins, he built a bomb recently. And because a few goblins helped building the bomb, something went wrong, obviously. And the gamma ray bomb exploded a tad too early. Ever since, the incredible Staggy has a few problems handling his adrenaline levels and changes his body shape in an uncontrollable fashion. We now want to help the Staggy by gathering and spreading out a lot, because he changes every time we do that. And every change lowers his adrenaline level. How this works in detail? Have a look. Here's a little something I prepared earlier. Your formation has an influence on the shape of Majordomo Staghelm. We decided to stack up for the beginning of the fight and trigger his scorpion shape. And when the adrenaline level gets too high, we will spread out and change him into a cat that way. Too high in regard to adrenaline levels means in later moments during the fight approximately 5 stacks of adrenaline. At the beginning though, when Majordomo is still quite tame, we try to delay this as much as possible. That's why we use an entity of 9 stacks of adrenaline during the first phase. Here in the first phase, Majordomo is only doing one frontal attack, which is called Flame Scythe. The damage is divided by all players who are in front of him. With more adrenaline stacks, his attacks come more frequently, which is why we start using raid cooldowns when it comes to 6 stacks. Something like Power Word Barrier, for example. If you have a quick look at Majordomo's unit frame, you can see that he has a little yellow energy bar. The longer he stays in one shape, the faster that gets recharged and the adrenaline stacks higher and higher. If you let the adrenaline get too high, you might not manage to get away quick enough to force Majordomo to change his shape, so don't overdo it. On the other hand, there's the advantage that you can migrate 2 Flame Scythes with 1 Power Word Barrier. We will let Majordomo change into a cat, so we spread out for that, approximately until the edge of this circle. Every time you let Majordomo change, his adrenaline level gets reset, but he gets 1 Fury stack. That way, Fury keeps stacking throughout the entire fight and increases his overall damage. In this phase, we're standing in a spread out fashion to dissolve. For a transformation, 18 players are needed. So when 18 are spread out, Majordomo is changing into a cat. And the other way around too. In this phase, Majordomo jumps randomly at players. Who he is jumping at is already clear when he leaps off, and the player in his focus should start running away, because in the target area of the jump a red fire circle, like a void zone, pops up, which causes quite a lot of damage. So you got to run out of there. Also, with every jump, a copy of Majordomo appears, which has fewer health and which you should kill as soon as possible. That should happen kind of along the way, either through dots from your ranged or through melee AoE attacks. When we spread out, it is not only important to choose the circular shape, but to keep a good distance between the players, so that the fire rings do not hit more than 1 player at a time. A distance of about 15 yards is recommended. For the first cat phase, we used 7 adrenaline stacks. In the following, we will reduce that to 5. Exactly like in the scorpion phase. The reason why we are dragging this out a bit at first is that not all of Majordomo's abilities are active at first. Here you can see that the scorpion shape is back in action. And this the second time he gained a second ability. Just like in the first fire instance, the Molten Core Baron Geddon, players get turned into bombs and have to run away from the group. This bomb is called Searing Seeds, however with different timers. So you get the Searing Seeds debuff and have to check the timer in your particular case. Some of our plays had 45 seconds, others had 30 or a minute or similar. The important thing to remember is to leave the group when the timer says 5 seconds, so you explode outside the group, so you don't hit another player. Theoretically, you only have to get 12 yards between you and the raid, but you have to make sure there is nobody around, and you shouldn't run into the fire circles, which are there during the beginning of this phase. These searing seeds appear in every second scorpion phase that follows, and they are placed every time Majordomo changes his shape. Here, we trigger the cat phase again. To tank the cat and its copies, we only use one tank that goes for the entire fight, as the copies seem to have quite some aggro on the tank, or probably the target of the actual cat. That's why it's no problem that the tank keeps all the focus on itself. The copies are not causing much damage either. But you should always try to kill the copy fairly quickly, so there are not more than 2 copies around at any given time. The whole fight looks pretty easy, and I must say it's not that difficult, but to trigger the transformations is not exactly a picnic. I know we said you just have to gather or spread out, but the timing is very important here. That means that every player has to keep an eye on how many stacks Majordomo has at the moment, which you can tell by his target bar, and you have to know how many players are needed to trigger a transformation, as it takes a few seconds to make that way, and for Majordomo to actually change his shape. Which means that you have to time it exactly until he's using his last attack, and then you run into your new formation. If you get hit by the flame scythe when you spread out, you're dead. 1 or 2 players down is manageable, but if more players die, you cannot trigger the transformation anymore. DPS and the tank can definitely pay attention to how many stacks Majordomo has, but the healers might not be able to do that, so it might be helpful to announce the stack status and when you're spreading out by a voice chat. By the way, we separated our group here in 2 halves and let those halves spread out evenly to left and right. The reason for that is a new ability in the cat shape, which you couldn't see yet, the burning orbs. You will see them here in a little while. The burning orbs work pretty much like the shards of torment in the fight beforehand, which means they always attack the players nearest to them, cause damage on him, and also stack a debuff on him. So, the longer you're standing beside one of those, the higher the debuff stacks, and the more damage you suffer. You need 2 players per orb, so 10 altogether, as the orbs appear in groups of 5. Those players can swap after 3 or 4 stacks, and it's no harm if they change more often, because the stacking debuff runs out after a few seconds. On top of that, the orbs seem to have an unlimited range, so you can run further away if there is no player near you. Generally, there should be players volunteering to go near an orb to receive the debuff. The players can be healers as well. The problem with those orbs is that they appear absolutely random. It can happen that 5 orbs appear on the left-hand side and none on the right, which is a tad impractical for the debuffs, or respectively the players. Well, at this stage the fight should be quite advanced, and it should be possible to cope with the loss of the one or the other player, although it would be quite unnecessary. Try to use whatever reduces your incoming damage, or tidies up the stacks. That's pretty much all that needs to be explained about this fight. As you can see, Majordomo Staghelm is nearing his end, and I want to say goodbye. As always, you can find a detailed guide to this fight on Ready4Raiding.com. Now, I wish you all the best for the fight and hope you can defeat Majordomo as quickly as we did.